Well, it is the Bergie and Booker show. I'm Booker. He's Bergie. Things are working out okay as summer starts to get closer. I know it's early May. We live in South Florida or southwestern Florida. We live a good life. It's always kind of a little bit summer here. Bergie, you and I have been yeah, you've been talking about the weather, talking about the palms behind you.
Yep.
We've also been talking about a lot of high school lacrosse.
Yes.
And we saw some really talented kids down here, some great teams down here. And we know there's some really strong club organizations down here. But there's also the Maryland, the Baltimore, the Long Island, the upstate, the West Coast. And I'm just starting with what I know. Philadelphia, Jersey, Minnesota's got good club lacrosse. Chicago has good club lacrosse. Where are you on the value of the club experience for your kids or kids that you know?
So with 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, all playing, unfortunately, it's a necessity in Florida for club lacrosse, and I think it's a necessity everywhere. And I say unfortunately because my background is high school football and basketball, and I really, really loved my high school experience with my teammates in both. Our freshman basketball team became, we were the 4 starters our senior year. We moved up the ranks together. We did all of that. Football, it's the same guys you still talk to 30 years ago that you played high school football with. And, your high school coach did everything for you. They helped you with recruiting. They helped you with just everything, all the aspects of life. Did they all do a great job? No, but and now the way AAU basketball is and the way club lacrosse is, and there are only pockets, I think, in the country right now where a big time Division I or a mid Division I or Division II or Division III coach is even speaking to the high school coach. I think everything's run through the club, and that's a major power trip, I think, for a lot of club directors. I'm not a fan of it, but we've been through a lot of clubs, and I think right now we're in a great spot for our boys. Very, very happy with the spot, but it's been a long road through 3 different states, trying to find a good fit, someone who I feel is in it for the coaching, is in it for the kids. They're making a living out of it too. Let's call a spade. But there's a difference between, making a living out of it and just bending a family over and saying, and there's a lot of those programs out there. And the farther you get away from New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and the wider you get out, and I don't know anything about the West Coast, but the farther you get away, the more money grabs and ripoffs there are.
Yeah, and it's true. And one of the things that you brought attention to was that college coaches will frequently talk to the club coach.
Yeah.
The club coach and director, they need to tread very carefully on that, because you can lose a coach's trust. And when you see them at summer tournaments, because they don't go recruit during their season as much as they used to. Selfishly, in the 90s, I coached in Baltimore, and at a couple high school games and guaranteed at the semifinals, all the top D1 coaches would be there. The problem is now, that was the 90s. The problem is now every fan has a cell phone, every fan has a social media thing. And they say, I saw the coach of this D1 school at the boys Latin game. And then that coach goes and loses their game on Saturday. And the fan base is up in arms because they were out recruiting on Tuesday instead of doing something, watching film or whatever it is. So that became almost a little bit of a witch hunt in the way they went about that. But in the summertime, club coaches and good high school coaches tend to gravitate towards coaching a club team as well. They can get a little FaceTime with those D1, D2, and D3. Not every player is a D1 player.
No.
And D3 coaches. And they can recommend a kid, and that is the best recommendation a college coach can get, because high school coaches see him at lunch, they see him on the bus traveling. They don't just show up on Saturday at 8 a.m. and shake their hand at 2:30 in the afternoon and say goodbye.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope because it also becomes what club is this person for? What, I only talk to these clubs. I only take people from here. I know on the girls' side, I mean, it's just a fact. Certain schools have girls that are committed to them because of their club. And I don't think the girl is necessarily ready for that program, but the college coach is filling out the backside of their roster. And they're like, well, listen, I can't piss this club off because they've got a great 25 next year and a great 26. And I don't want to lose my relationship with that club.
Yeah.
And I have plenty of friends whose daughters are in college playing or have been through this in the last 5 years. And if there's a transfer, they call their club and they say, hey, listen, would you reach out to these schools for me? I'm thinking about transferring. And I mean, if it's done properly, the club coach has a lot of power and it can be a good thing. But if it's done improperly or, it's done to somebody else's detriment, which I think happens quite a bit. I don't like a guy who's making money off of parents being the go-between between John Tillman and so-and-so's kid. I don't like that. I wish John Tillman talked to the athletic director and the high school coach, and I wish John Tillman, and I'm using him as an example, spoke to the school and the old-fashioned recruiting visits of football and basketball where they come to your house and they meet your family. None of that exists in club lacrosse. It's all come to my prospect camp and pay for a club team and do this and maybe we'll like you, maybe we don't. What club do you play for?
If I can, let me jump in and ask you to evaluate. There's 3 or 4 element or possible recruiting opportunities for a college coach at a D1, 2, or 3 school.
Right.
You got their club lacrosse program. You have their high school lacrosse program. You have your own prospect days, or you have a showcase / a tryout event. For me, high school lacrosse coach and that connection and those teammates, that's the best and most important way for a college coach to go through it. Yet you and I are kind of in agreement that it's not happening that way.
Well, if you're playing the MIAA or like the Interact or some of those leagues, I think he probably is still calling the coach at Calvert Hall, the coach at Boys Latin, Gilman. I think, he's calling Malvern Prep. I think they're calling those guys. And maybe that's not the be all end all, but he's certainly calling them. Do I think Drexel University's head coach is calling Cardinal Mooney's coach and talking to him about a kid? No, I know for a fact they're calling the director. I know the club that our boys play for here in Florida, the FLC. I know the director, and I know the conversations he's had with kids all throughout the state of Florida and their parents. And I know that he's the one that has necessarily, I hate to say negotiated, but he's the one that sort of negotiated a deal with St. Joe's. He's the one who played one school against another, and I mean that in a good way.
Yes. When you say the word negotiate, I want to make sure that people don't take it as a financial reward. I know Matt very well. Matt's a great guy, and he is truly in it for the kids.
Yeah, I mean negotiate as in, hey, this school's willing to give this, because we all know there's very few full rides in lacrosse. This school's willing to give this guy, 20%. Are you willing to match it? This is, this kid. What do you? That type of negotiation. He's done it. He's done it for people, and he's, there's a lot of really good people. It's been my experience being Pennsylvania, then to South Carolina, where it was just god awful, and it was just all money grabs, and it was all lies, and they'd say there was a tryout, and then they'd put 25 kids on a team, and then after they paid, it was like, oh, well, everybody plays 50-50. Well, that's not a travel team. That's a pay to play, rec team. So, that happens, but buyer beware. That only happens to you once or twice, and then your younger kids get it. But again, I wish that they talked to the high school coaches more often. But right now, the club guys have you. I mean, they truly have you in the sport of lacrosse. But it's also that way, I believe, in like volleyball, and it's a way that soccer's becoming that way, from what I understand. And I know travel baseball is huge, and I don't think it's a good thing.
So one of the things, I have a good friend of mine who played football at Maryland. I have a good friend of mine who played football at Kentucky. Football's a huge, billions of dollars a year. And lacrosse is lucky if we're a $100 million a year sport. Anyway, showcases. There are some really good showcases out there, and college coaches at every level flock to them. And then there's other showcases where it's, a couple colleges get together and say, okay, we'll support this showcase because it's kids in our area. I know there's one going on the Eastern Shore of Maryland where it's all kind of schools from that area coming together and saying, let's recruit our kids instead of trying to look at D1 kids.
And the showcases, and again, just kind of getting it now at the top with our oldest. The showcases seem to be on the women's side a lot. Like the women's teams and the women's coaches get along. I think because it's so few of them that are actually, they've all played together in some aspect, because the women's game is still growing. Not that the men's isn't, but it's still, and they're not as nasty. I don't think. Like, you wouldn't have 4 Big Ten guy schools at a showcase together, hosted at one Big Ten university campus. Meanwhile, you'll have these things where, Penn State, Villanova, and Drexel and JMU will all get together and throw something at a location. That would never happen on the men's side. I mean, it would never happen. Now,
what I think the ACC men's teams have one. I don't know how well I don't know how it's going so far, but I do think that they have one where it's Virginia, Notre Dame, Carolina, Duke. But I don't know how well it's.
If you're talking about for bang for your buck, that would be awesome for kids.
Yeah. For a D1, for a kid who can play at Duke or Syracuse or Notre Dame.
But doesn't have $6,000 to go to every prospect camp individually summer, as well as play on his club team, as well as play, get everywhere. I mean, everybody wants you to come to their prospect camp. Well,
right.
They don't have it be $500 for everybody. I mean, it's unbelievable, some of the prices of these prospect camps. And I know that you can lower it, but the NCAA rules, you can do some things if you really want the kid, but the showcases, if it's multiple schools, I think it's great. If it's a one prospect camp here or there, that's a great thing. But again, the tournaments. Name me a high school. So once kids get out of 8th grade, all right, name me a high school season or a college season that reflects in any way a tournament where you play 5 games in 36 hours. And you're doing all that stuff. And half the time, I don't even think they're coaching to win. I think they're just showcasing kids.
Yeah, or coaching to see like the NHSLS that happens twice every summer now. And I think they have a fall session. They take high school teams, and, some of them have to, by league rule, go in as the Purple Lords or the Red Birds or the Baby Birds or whatever they call themselves, just to not be that school.
Right.
And they'll go and play in the NHSLS with the high school head coach. It's not a bad way to do it. But like you just said, a lot of times you look at those sidelines and there's 30 kids on the sidelines. So now, how much of that D1 kid are you seeing in order to make it worthwhile to a college coach to come look at him if he's going to take 2 runs at midi or 7 minutes on attack and he gets the ball twice?
So one of the best ones I've heard of, and Darling went to it, there was one up in South Carolina, and they did 2 hours of stations for the girls, and it was all run by college coaches. College coaches ran the stations as well as walked around with clipboards. Then there was a break, and then they did games, and they were
Yep.
actually coached by the college coaches. I'm talking about, you know, mid to high level college coaches were all
Sure.
there coaching the girls, got to interact with the girls, got to give them tips, tried to win the game because the coaches are all very competitive,
Sure.
and sat there and, you know, got to evaluate the girl a little bit more than just sitting on the sideline, got to see how she interacts with teammates and all of that type of stuff. I thought that was
sounds a lot. That event sounds a lot like what Corrigan Sports did, and where we had the Callback Academy, then we changed the name to the Impact Academy, and now it is Peak Prospect. And we had probably 120 girls and 80 boys down in Tampa, and we did that exact thing where it was 2 hours of stations with John Tillman.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of the coach. Gary Gate was there. A lot of Florida D2 coaches.
Yeah.
But one of the huge values you get from that is the player, or even the parent, but it should really be the player, can go up to that college coach that's been with them or saw him go through the station twice and then coached against them even, and say, hey, where do you think I fit? Where do you think I fit?
Yeah, that's fantastic. It would be nice that there's more of those. The prospect camps, it's kind of an odd thing because
Oh yeah,
they'll take anybody at the open ones.
Yep.
So you're playing against.
I can sign up.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing against. Who knows who you're playing against? Are there going to all be prospects? Yeah, there probably will be.
Yeah.
But what's the true measure of a really good prospect who makes a great feed and the other girl can't catch, or the other guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. I on the boys' side, we're not there yet with Duke only being a freshman. I don't know what the scope of why a coach will like a kid from a standpoint of, or how much he'll go into. Is it just going to be the club guy? Is it going to be the high school coach as well? Probably not in Florida, unfortunately.
Yeah. So one of the things that I have written down, and this is how college coaches recruit.
Right.
They try to see the student athlete as what they can become.
Sure.
And you look at UVA, there's a lot of freshmen who go there and spend more time on the sidelines their first year and maybe even their second year. But then they work their way into the coaches looking at them for who they can become as a player. But also, we all know lacrosse is a great vehicle to go be successful in something else.
So, and I don't think that is unique to lacrosse. I think, I've got tons of, I got a friend of mine, Jim Panagos, who's going to be here tomorrow. He's recruiting Sarasota area for Kansas, and a whole bunch of coaches, we are in spring football season here, are in town, and they're all playing the guessing game. They're all trying to, predict where this kid's going to be in a couple of years. I mean, we're giving offers of scholarships to sophomores and juniors in high school. Good for them. What's it based on? It's based on the measurable that the kid has now, where we think his ceiling is going to be. That has failed NBA draft guys for 20 years since they started doing the high school kids. How many guys more guys have petered out than have actually been successful coming out of high school?
And it's the same thing, like you said, in football. One of my favorite follows on Twitter is Ryan Leaf.
Yeah.
Ryan Leaf owns the fact that he was this, he was that. And all of them are not great things that he's talking about, right. But he owns it. And yeah, the night before the NFL draft, people were saying, Ryan Leaf, Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf, Peyton Manning. They couldn't decide. Obviously, now we know that it worked out for Peyton Manning quite well, and it worked out for Ryan Leaf quite poorly. And he'd be the first one to tell you that.
Yeah.
And that just is that those are the best of the best evaluating talent and clearly getting it wrong.
Well, yeah. And we'll go, the NFL draft just happened, and the first three guys were quarterbacks. And maybe to truly wrap a bow on the white quarterback, black quarterback controversy or issue that's been going on for years, the first three were all black guys, and guess what? They've now all reached even. At least one of them is going to be an absolute failure. History and analytics tell us, if not two of them. I mean, half the guys that are drafted in the first round and the NFL quarterback are complete and utter failures. Now is the
that's a rough stat.
Is the NFL draft the same as college recruiting? No, but again, you go back to the club guy. So you're trying to predict a lacrosse player because you're allowed to talk to him September 1st of his junior year or her junior year. Okay. Before all the craziness of reclassification, that kid was 16, maybe 17,
maybe 15,
maybe 15. Okay. Now with all the reclassification up in the Northeast, probably 18, but maybe not, depending on what school and what league
right.
you're in. But you're going to predict, and you're going to talk to a club coach, and that club coach who is getting paid by the parents, and has maybe multiple siblings all paying them, and he's going to swear by the kid. And what do you really know about him if you haven't talked to the high school coach or the guidance counselor or seen his transcript?
Yep, that's a huge point. And the fact that it happens so frequently, you want that club coach. I coached with the Rough Riders for a long, long time. And before every game, we had one of those STX ball bags with about 30 balls in it. And we also shoved like 30 game programs of all of our kids got their own page.
Right.
So you turn one page, it's Jack Adams. You turn the other page, it's Rustin Bryant. You turn the other page, it's Joe Sider. It's Matt Dusick. It's Justin Ward. And they can see their GPA, any accolades, their email address, a quote about what the coach is Corrigan, because I coached it with my cousin Lee, little quote about what we thought about their game, usually something funny. Their game part was very serious. And then we'd say, hobbies or additional interests. That's where we'd start claiming they were black belts in karate, or that they'd been a waiter at a certain restaurant for 17 years, stuff like that, just to see if the college coach gets all the way to the bottom.
Well, and the kids and that's great. That's a small club, and that's what it should be, and there are those that exist in Philadelphia and exist in Maryland and exist in New York and Connecticut, New Jersey. The problem, the real problem with club lacrosse is the corporations that have taken it over and become these massive multi-state corporations, and are trying to run it from an area and trying to run 26 states or 26 different teams, and it doesn't work out, because now you really have become a money making tool as opposed to something for the kids.
Yep. And then it's best for the kids. Yeah.
And then they hit you up, okay, here's your fee for this. Oh, and then we're going to have an extra day, and we're going to do this, and we're going to call it a prospect day, but it's only going to be our club. Oh, that's $450. And we're going to do this. Hey, we're going to add another tournament, and we're going to send out the email to all the players and tell them we're at another tournament and get everybody excited. And then we're going to hit mom and dad up for another $1,200 because the tournament extra or this. And that happens. That happens in these big corporate clubs, and
it happens in the big corporate showcases too. There's one on the girls' side where the girls go and try out, and if they make the team, the corporation sends an email to the player, to the daughter,
right,
and says, "Oh, by the way, you made the team. It's an extra $600 to be on the team. You have to send your money in the next 48 hours, or we're going to give up your spot." And the daughter runs down the stairs to mom and dad and says, "Hey, I really want to do this. Please, 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 please." And they end up with $600 additional to the 170 tryout fee. Hey, I want to see your comments in the comments section about clubs, about showcases, about good things and bad things.
Give us a good showcase that your kid got something out of, boy or girl, and give us something that you thought was worth the money, boy or girl, because that's good for everybody to know. And then give us ones that you think stay away from. And I don't care. I don't care about hurting anybody's feelings. If one absolutely was a complete and utter waste of money, put it down there. That's on them. Do better.
Yes.
That's on them. Do better. Yeah, you really have to. We could do this for hours and hours, and we should get some
Yep.
people on there because you really do have to weigh in on what is a complete and utter money grab, what is a waste of time, what is very, very valuable, and then is that worth the $250 because it is a good thing? Is that worth it? And when you
But talking about that club team that's a one-off ish, or it happens in Maryland, it happens in Long Island, it happens upstate New York, where they have one team for each age group.
Yeah.
And they're practicing a lot.
Right.
And they're going to the right tournaments. They're playing great games. And every kid walks away saying it was worth it. But when you're getting nickel and dime, and I talked to my stepson who plays college lacrosse, my own son played college lacrosse, so I'm kind of on the back end of it. The really good club programs charge you about $1,200, $1,500 to enter the tournaments, cover the fees, cover the this, make sure you have, a good practice field that costs money. But when you get up into the 3,000, 3,500 range that's your club fee. And then all of a sudden they're tacking on a uniform fee. Then they're tacking on a showcase fee. Then they're talking on, prospect or whatever, a coach's conversation fee. Oh my God. There are clubs in Long Island. I've heard this. I obviously don't know anyone who does it, but they charge you. If they talk to a college coach about you, they charge you $25 or $50 and it'll show up on your bill. Coach's connection.
But that's another thing. I would say, no, I'm not paying it.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Show me a recording of the conversation. What'd you say? Were you talking about golf with Bergie?
Well, and that's again what you're talking about. Using Philadelphia or using Baltimore. So the Philadelphia Freedom is a club that I know. I have family that play for them, and Duke has gone and guested last summer when we had some time up there. And okay, they've got every level of boys and girls grade. Okay. Well, if you got a kid who plays from 8th grade or 7th grade or 6th grade all through high school, then the club coach knows a lot about you and can say a lot of good things. And they don't charge as much as the clubs in other areas. Now down in Florida, you have to get charged a little bit more because guess what? All the tournaments are much farther away for us in the summer. So
that makes sense. That makes total sense.
If you want to do it right and pay for the coaches not to get out of their pockets, you do have to spend a little bit more.
Sure.
But one of the nice things we found with our current boys club is that we're playing all these fall tournaments in our backyard. Like we don't have to leave Florida. Okay. And everybody comes down here in the fall, and then we've got to go up there in the summertime. But when he discussed it and when we did everything, we knew exactly how much it was going to cost. And that is the price of the tournaments. That is the price of the practices. That is a price of the
uniforms.
The uniforms. We didn't get hit for uniforms. We didn't get hit for helmets. We didn't get hit for all that stuff. They want everything uniform. And then, so you can't tell a guy, I want you to wear this helmet and then charge him $250. Which some of these corporate teams, you're on the national team. Here's $500. Give me $500.
You got to wear the national team helmet.
You got to wear right. And that includes the 4 or 5 weekend, clinic things where we all come together in one area of the state of Florida and we practice together. So
that's included.
Everything's included in one price. Okay, everything's included in the one price, and it's half of what some of these corporate and even less than some of the other corporate things. And you're not getting nickel and dimed for absolutely anything. And I do know that if I pick up the phone, the director is going to call me in a reasonable amount of time. Or if I do text somebody, I'm going to hear in a reasonable amount of time. The corporate structure of some of the other programs, it's okay, we're going to blow it up and we're going to have 9 dads coaching and we're going to charge everybody $3,500. And it's a complete and utter waste of time.
So, and it sounds like, going back to my phrase of, what a college coach is looking for. Ultimately, it's really what a high school coach is looking for. And I'll take it all the way back to my middle school teaching roots of see the child for what they can become. And that's what you're trying to help. When you talk with a college coach, you're trying to help them see, and maybe they come back different and say, I don't think he can become that. Or, hey, I think he can become much more. That's why I really, really want him. But on back to school night, when I was teaching sixth grade, the parents would come into my classroom and I would say, I got bad news for you. I'm not in the business of teaching sixth graders. I'm in the business of making good seventh graders. That was my job. I wanted to make a good seventh grader. And then when I taught seventh grade, I was making good eighth graders. And it was something to set the tone of what my expectations are for kids and what a club director's expectations are. And if you're running a showcase, you should want those kids to come there and say, I got exposure to great college coaches at every level. And I'm going to hear from a bunch of them because they all have my contact info and they had a chance to evaluate me against all this other top competition.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. He's Bergie. I'm Booker. We do what we do. We do it pretty well. A little body armor light for our hero. You know, happy days.
There we go.